Greetings, fellow chums, and welcome to Rubber Chicken with a Podcast in the Middle, the internet's only podcast exclusively devoted to the Monkey Island series of adventure games. I'm Alastair.
I'm Gordon.
And this episode we're going to be talking about Return to Monkey Island.
It's finally here. Full
Spoiler edition of our experience of playing this game.
Are you ready to get into it? Do you feel psyched?
Probably. I feel more mellow now than I did immediately before playing the game on Tuesday, but yeah.
So we played it together on Tuesday. We hung out.
Yeah,
and we played it together for about 7 hours straight, I think.
Yeah, probably. We got through the first 3 parts of the game and a bit of part 4.
Yeah, and we did it kind of like the old days where we'd pass the mouse back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was fun. We kind of devolved into like fits of laughter a few times.
Yeah. It was a bit of a manic experience. We had we had a lot of caffeine and not that much food. And so it got pretty intense as we were going through. But it was fun. It was definitely fun to play together and recapture the old days, which was definitely. A bit of a theme of this game, or indeed a major theme of this game, so it was quite apropos.
Absolutely, it was something I reflected on a lot on completion.
Yeah, definitely. And I went home that night and I finished it that night in a state of high anxiety, I want to say.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. There's kind of a there's a weird atmosphere playing this game because you wanted it to go for a long time and you wanted to get immersed and enjoy it, but also you kind of really needed to have finished it in order to relax about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I need to know what's going to happen at the end, especially in that final part of the game.
Yeah.
Got incredibly intense for me. It was getting late, work the next day, and I'm like, I need to get through this. I need to know what's going on.
Like,
I won't be able to get through work
on your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's funny I talked about not being able to sleep the night before. It was much harder to sleep that night after I'd finished the game. Because my mind was just running wild.
Well, as you said, we played on your computer, and then you took your computer home, and I played on my computer, and I had to catch up back up to part 4, where we finished off. You and I played together. You've played it now 3 times in full?
Yeah. So we played on PC initially, then I played it on Switch, and then I replayed it again on PC.
Okay. I'd say I've played it kind of 2.5 times because I played half with you and then I've played the full thing on my own. So I've kind of done it backwards, 1.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took me a couple of days and I was kind of grabbing time here and there. 10 minutes here, go try to figure something out, 10 minutes there. Which is an interesting way to play it and kind of one that I really reflected on after I finished the game.
Yeah, different experiences for each of us at that point.
Yeah, different experiences compared to the other games. Secret Revenge. We weren't even that focused on finishing it or anything. It was
no, exactly. And we were so much younger and had so many fewer. Is that grammatically correct? We had far fewer responsibilities.
Yes, we did. We had much less responsibility
than we do now, but we have both finished it now, and we've already talked to each other about it a lot. Yeah. There's a huge amount to say. I think we've decided that we're going to have a general discussion in this episode. As we said, full spoilers. We're not going to hide anything because if you're listening to this, you've either already finished the game or you don't care, I imagine. But
big spoilers.
We'll talk about the individual parts in depth separately, like we've been doing for the other games.
Yeah.
Just to really make sure that we can give everything its due attention over time.
I think so. The big question right up top, and I don't know how to answer this, so I want to ask you. Did you like it?
Yeah, so this is a question that is a tricky one to answer, and I think I'm gonna, I'll repeat what I said in the review I wrote up for my blog, which you've read, which is that I like this game. I love parts of it. It's also a mess. And parts of it I found very frustrating, and parts of it I don't think are very good. Parts of it I think are very brilliant as well.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking about it. I almost kind of would tend to say, no, I didn't like it, but also, yes, I did. And I think I will like it more as I relax into it and play it again and again.
You think it'll grow on you?
I do, yeah. And I kind of think about it how it would be in the context of this was a game that had a couple of sequels after it, and this was another episode of the series, and we'd say, oh, but remember in Return? Yeah, I liked Return.
Yeah. I think this had... Yeah.
If you didn't like Escape straight away, now I really love that game, so I wonder how it'll be with hindsight and time. But it has been quite an intense week. And yeah, I've thought about it a lot, and it was like I wanted to enjoy it, but I really wanted to get to the end because I didn't want it spoiled, and I just I really had to know. You
didn't want to be distracted by it, as we say.
Yeah, that was the thing.
In your day-to-day life as well, right?
Yeah, which is so bizarre. It's like this thing that you love, yet you need it to be over.
Yeah, and the game kind of addresses that idea to a certain extent.
Yeah.
As well, right?
Yeah, it does.
This game kind of folds into itself almost any possible reaction or response to it, which is kind of the genius, but at the same time the defensiveness of it. Yeah.
There's so much going on with the end of this game that it almost makes up. I think once you've finished it, it's so thought-provoking.
Yeah.
That you almost forgive the rest.
This is how I put it in a group chat to a couple of friends of mine who've played, both have played Secret Special Edition, one of whom has played LeChuck's Revenge Special Edition, and a bit of Curse and gave up after that, and they haven't played the series beyond that, and they knew I was really hyped about it, and they said, what was it like? And I said, this was the reaction. I said, I went over to Gordon's place, and our reaction was, it was first okay, this is good. And then after a couple of hours, we were like, oh no. And then when I went home and finished it, I was like, oh, thank God they stuck the landing.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
And I know not everyone, I've read a lot of reactions, not everyone agrees with that, of course, but that was definitely my experience of it. Was like, oh, this is great. Oh no, they completely screwed this up. Wait, no, they haven't. At the end.
Yeah, that's what it was. Kind of a bit of a roller coaster because it felt like the initial. It opens with that prelude.
Yeah.
And we both kind of loved that.
Yeah.
And then it was like it got into part one. And we were kind of like, okay, when's this going to
pretty much what we expected, right? From the Melee Island sequence.
Yeah, all the Monkey Mondays. And then by the time we got to part two, we were kind of giving each other looks.
Yeah.
Part three, we were like, oh, I don't think I like this.
Yeah.
But then part four, it started to open up again.
Yeah. And started to kind of lift back up. Yeah.
Yeah. That was kind of through that first day playing together, that was kind of our thing. And I know by part four, that was when you and I were kind of devolving into these fits of childish giggles.
And we sort of started to make fun of the game as we were playing it.
Which was part of the fun of the day.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like we were so immersed and taking it so seriously that we wouldn't do that.
No.
But I enjoyed it for that, if nothing else.
Yeah, it was fun to play together, and
definitely.
the game kind of, as we've talked about already, weirdly sort of acknowledges that and kind of knows that people, maybe it's by accident, but
Oh yeah, like there's so much to get into around
So
this.
much of the experience is like folded into the framing device and everything of this that, yeah, yeah, even our reactions to it that we've just been describing are kind of the game almost explains or acknowledges or expects that.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
really, it almost addresses that too much, I think.
to the point of
Point of being
exhaustion,
defensive,
you think?
I think.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I do think, the game comes across as a touch defensive.
Yeah, like they've really covered themselves off.
Yeah.
Which is understandable though, especially looking at the history of the last few months of the announcement
absolutely.
and everything.
Yeah. And the ridiculous expectations that have been laid upon this concept for years now.
Yeah.
The idea that like Ron's gonna come back and save Monkey Island, and this game the whole way through has almost been like Ron asking, was it worth it? Are you sure you wanted me to come back? Kind of thing.
At the same time though, it also, you know how we said it wouldn't affect you said it wouldn't affect your kind of feelings about the end of LeChuck's Revenge. This has kind of affected not my feeling around LeChuck's Revenge, but around the 3 games that came after.
Yeah.
In that it was a bit like saying, these games are part of it, and you can choose to like them or not, and that's all okay.
Yeah, I definitely found that, as I said, this didn't change my opinion or my perspective on LeChuck's Revenge. If anything, it kind of reinforced it, actually. And I think, in some respects, I think LeChuck's Revenge enhances this game naturally, because it's like, this builds on that. It doesn't retrospectively go back in time and change that.
Yeah.
Or maybe it does, depending on your interpretation, but... and we'll talk about that at some point, I imagine. But yeah, definitely this folded, Curse, Escape, and Tales and said, yes, these games all count. If you love these games, good for you, kind of thing. That's totally cool.
Yeah. And I really appreciated that. It felt like, yes, everything is canon, everything is good. If you didn't like it, that's cool. The other games are there.
Definitely. And when we thought that maybe this is really going to be 3A, it wasn't at all. We were we were right. Yeah, we were right initially when we said this is going to take place after Tales, and it did.
It did, yeah. It took place after everything, kind of.
Yeah.
Let's get into how do you want to attack it? What did you like? What didn't you like? Which one do you want to start with?
Yeah, I think we should probably go into what we liked and didn't like. Maybe we'll talk about criticisms first. Because I think if we talk about what we like, that's probably going to open up an even bigger discussion.
Let's sandwich it up. Well, when we're talking about discussion, I wanted to address... I think we're going to step through this, not today, but part by part.
Yeah.
And I think if you listen to us discussing this part by part, this is what I'm guessing, you might think that we really didn't like the game.
Yeah, which is not the case.
No. But for now, as we're just talking about like an overview, and I think we need a real like in-depth chat about the ending. Is something we'll probably address when we discuss maybe part 5. We'll do a whole part 5 kind of discussion.
Yeah. It's like, definitely. And I think if we get into that, just to sum up, I think as a Monkey Island game about the Monkey Island games, this game's really good. As a Monkey Island game on its own, this is one of the weaker installments in the series.
Yeah, that would be my criticism, I think. I don't really know where to start. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty, really, but I feel like if we're discussing criticisms, my criticism is that this is very, as I was fearful of, self-referential, and very much, as you say, a game about the Monkey Island games. And therefore not bringing anything particularly fresh and new and exciting, and not getting me excited about new ideas and characters and puzzles and things. It was kind of for the fans.
As a game that comments on the series, it's very good. But as a game that does something new. It doesn't. It does some things new, but it retreads a lot of old ground at the same time. A lot of references to things that have come before, characters we've already met, and storyline elements that are a bit similar or quite similar to things that have been done before as well.
Yeah, and I think if you're taking that, like, because we're like super OG hardcore fans playing this, and I wonder what people who are kind of casually coming to this are thinking of. But I think if we're thinking about it that way, we can get into a few things. I want to start with characters. Yeah?
Yes.
And while we're being critical, the character of Elaine, I feel, is severely underwritten.
I feel like Elaine's all over the place in this game. I don't know if she supports Guybrush, if she's upset at Guybrush, if she doesn't really care.
She comes across as very vague.
Yeah.
And to the point where, and you and I discussed this and we agreed, we came to this conclusion separately, that it felt like it was going to end up that Elaine wasn't real, or that, this was just a facade of Elaine, or a Guybrush imagining Elaine being there.
Something like that, or that she was dead, or that, I don't know, that they weren't really married and he was just fantasizing that they were or something. But unless you go. I was going to say, unless you interpret it that way, which I guess you could, it really just seemed like Elaine was sort of just there to go to Guybrush. You've done some things that's not so good, and like, it's okay, but, maybe your obsession's getting a bit carried away with you. And there wasn't really ultimately there was no drama or conflict created by that. It felt like there was going to be, and then it just kind of all fizzled out, and Elaine was just, oh, hi Guybrush, just be careful what you wish for kind of thing, and hope you had fun today, let's go home kind of thing.
Yeah, so I thought it was going to be like the Guybrush's obsession with finding the secret was going to end up with him losing Elaine, and like that was going to be a big sad ending or something. Because there was that conversation, Guybrush and Elaine are walking along in the jungle on Monkey Island, and she's kind of criticising him a bit. But it doesn't go anywhere.
Damage he's caused. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was definitely thinking, with all the cutscenes and everything, he's going to have to choose between the secret and Elaine.
Yeah,
which is something I'd thought of before. I'm like, if you wanted to give Monkey Island 2, if it had a more conventional ending, could have been about Guybrush has to choose between Big Whoop and Elaine, but didn't. That. Ron said, that would have been Guybrush and Elaine ends up together would have been boring or whatever. But it feels like there was an idea there, but maybe either they decided not to go with it, or maybe it feels a bit like Elaine maybe was written late in the process, and she was just kind of dotted into the story.
Yeah, because it felt like she didn't really affect anything, and she just turned up. She turned up in Melee, she just turned up on Monkey Island. She knew how to get to and from Monkey Island.
I wonder if from a writing perspective, if possibly they'd avoided dealing with her for a while, and then they'd written the story and were kind of like, okay, let's just plop Elaine into this at certain points, or something.
Well, that's Elaine. The other thing about characters, I think a lot of the humour fell a little flat to me. I don't love to be super critical, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't, and I think I said this in the lead up, I hadn't seen anything that I thought was enormously funny, and there wasn't a great deal that I found particularly funny in this game. There are a few lines that stand out, but
there are a few really funny moments.
It wasn't hugely funny overall. No. I did my third playthrough with the voice acting turned off.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the lines worked a bit better when you were able to apply your own interpretation to them by reading them. I wonder, as I've said elsewhere, were these lines kind of written to be read because they're not so much to be performed? I don't know. I feel like maybe something was a bit lost in the performance, possibly.
Possible.
Not that the voice acting's bad, but maybe just the way that they were written wasn't really to be performed, and there's some kind of conflict there potentially.
Yeah. Well, there's no limit on file size or anything anymore.
Yeah.
And that could have been something that benefited the old games, and I think it kind of did, because you had to be more succinct with what the characters said, and that often what is not said is also important, and you get to feel that in yourself. And there's a lot. I know there's like the director's cut thing, the writer's cut.
Yeah, the writer's cut
adds more waffle, but like there was a lot of waffle anyway. And I found it a little impenetrable, especially on my second playthrough, like the next day or whatever, trying to catch up. It was like, yeah, I know all this, but like there's a hell of a lot of information here that's just... This was also a criticism of mine of Tales. It was just too much. We're bombarded with quirky...
massive dialogue trees.
Yeah.
I was thinking of what you were saying when we did our episode on Rise of the Pirate God, thinking about the bird drinking the water, like hammering the key to try and get through all the dialogue with Galeb in Rise of the Pirate God or whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought of that. I think part 2, for example, when Guybrush escapes from the hold and you've got to get the crew to vote on going to Monkey Island, it's like suddenly you've got like... Is it like 6 characters thrown at you? 5 or 6 characters?
Yeah.
To run through these quite long dialogue trees with, to figure out, you know, what's going to change their vote and what do they think about the situation and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And one, it's a lot of conversations that you have to have in this one part. And 2, the writing I didn't think was strong enough to
carry
make this compelling enough to be interesting. Like, I think we were getting quite on edge playing this. Again, we'd had a lot of coffee, but like, being okay, I'm not fascinated by these characters. Like, can we just get on with it?
Yeah, it was a bit like, oh, come on, shut up. Like, let me get to the next.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking again about what we talked about with Tales, that a lot of dialogue overwritten similarly, you could argue. Again, my opinion. But I was thinking about Tales, and particularly sort of the back end of that game, and how much they focused on just Morgan. And and, you know, love or hate Tales or whatever, but I feel like that it was more successful, where it's like, you get to know Iron Rose and Putra and Flambe and Bob and
Apple
Flair.
Bob.
You know, it's like it's so many characters in this part, and the other thing was, of course, the 3 new pirate leaders, who it's like we didn't need all 3 of them. It felt like way too many characters getting involved.
Yeah, and often I don't like, because I like to replay these games however I want, I don't like having to step through dialogue trees in order to unlock puzzles and things like that. There's a little bit of that I don't mind, but when there's a lot, think about in Curse, those 3 barber characters, you can choose to spend ages talking to them if you want, but at the same time, you don't have to talk to them at all.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed is you could skip talking to Flair. I noticed that replaying it, you could just give her the knife, the whaling knife, and you didn't have to talk to her. But with the Bob, Flambe, Putra thing, you've got to go to Putra, get the form, go talk to LeChuck. LeChuck gives you a document to get Iron Rose to sign, get Rose to sign the thing to give you the documents that you take back to LeChuck. Then what's her name again? Putra will make the dish that you give to Flambe, who gives you the book that you give to Bob. So all of these solutions are kind of locked behind having this conversation I had to have with Putra, where she said, I want to be a chef.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's okay, but it's like, it was like too much, I felt, was weighing on this conversation. And I was like, we'll probably have a separate episode where we could talk about how you could tighten up this game, but it's like, just have like 2 characters in LeChuck's crew, not 5.
Yeah,
Something like that.
You can bulk it out. You can give it the illusion of life with characters, like in Secret, which you've got the Chuck's crew. They're there. You know, one of them's asleep. They're dancing, whatever. So you've got that. You've got that life, or two of them are asleep. But you don't have to interact with everyone. I mean, it's fine that they want to do that. Maybe people love these characters, but I, especially on originally playing through, I was a bit like, oh, these characters aren't doing it for me so much, so I don't really care to talk to them this much.
I definitely thought, as you say, maybe people will love them. These seem like the kind of things where you'll see people on Twitter or whatever, like posting their fan art of their favourite member of LeChuck's crew or their favourite one of the pirate leaders or whatever. Oh, I loved,
Putra.
Gullet or whatever.
I think I might have liked Gullet
I forgot Gullet. There's another character.
Yeah. While we're talking about unlocking stuff, that would be another criticism of mine. The key thing and the inventory in general, and puzzle solutions.
Yes,
there are some really nice puzzles that I liked, and some puzzles like there were a lot of keys.
Yeah. A lot of keys and a lot of maps.
A lot of just documents, right? You ended up with all of, and I was like, which document is which that I have to give to who? At one point, you have to rifle through documents to find another document that's buried in the documents. There's another puzzle where you have to put one document with other documents.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. All the keys, having to find. You look at the. Magnify this to get the serial number to get the key for that, and then the final big puzzle, or the kind of penultimate big puzzle, is just finding keys.
More keys, and I get that was kind of a theme of the game, was the idea of locks and keys being symbols for mysteries and their solutions.
Sure,
but it felt a bit overdone.
Yeah, because this felt like keys are a computer game thing as well.
Yeah, and adventure game solutions are like keys in locks
unlocking
as
stuff.
well.
Yeah,
maybe this kind of that
ties into a bigger criticism overall, which is that this isn't particularly piratey. This is very real world.
Yeah, the obvious comparison is between finding these keys and finding the map pieces to Big Whoop, right?
Yes,
and
of course.
That feels so piratey, and I think the narration of the scrapbook even says that. If you click on the piece of the Big Whoop map, he says, "Oh, it's about as piratey as you can get, looking for maps." And it's like, finding these golden keys, like I've said, and I said this about Tales a million times, feels like something from a fantasy game. And I think the idea if you got to find these 5 keys to unlock old Captain So-and-so's chest or whatever is not necessarily a non-piratey thing, but it was the way it was presented was like these were like fantasy keys, and and you go to these very fantasy-esque islands, Bermuda and Terror Island, and I guess we might go into that a bit more. But
well, it's not dissimilar to finding the ingredients for the voodoo doll and finding the maps.
No,
doing the 3 trials. It's all unlocking stuff.
It's just very MacGuffin-y, isn't it? It's like you can't unlock this safe unless you find these 5 keys. And when the splash screen for part 4 came up with a picture of 5 keys on it, I was like, oh no, we're gonna have to. This is gonna be what this thing is about.
It was gonna be a key quest.
Item hunting, and I think from that perspective, it was a bit. It wasn't terribly compelling and didn't feel that piratey, as we say. I think you could make this work, but it's just felt a little bit too much, especially because, as you say, there were so many times you had to go to the locksmith to get a key made, read the number, and the number of maps that you had to get from Wally or swap with other maps, or all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
I mean, there were some puzzles I really liked. Like, I liked making your own mop, and I liked the kind of chef thing about him, even though it didn't really make sense that it was a chef telling you. I like that, your mop finds you kind of thing. And it was a whole, like, building your own lightsaber or whatever kind of idea.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that it was you had to find a stick and you had to find something to stick to the stick, to become the swabby on the ship. Like, those are the kind of cute puzzles I like. The stuff that's rifling through documents. It felt that would feel impenetrable to me, to like a child's point of view of the world.
Yeah.
Like, imagine us as 8-year-olds or whatever trying to figure out what an affidavit is. Like
Yeah.
it would be too difficult. And but I guess a lot of this stuff ties into the fact with the letter that we're presented with from Ron and Dave at the end. Where they're saying, this is a game made by two men in their 50s, right?
Yeah.
And it is the game they want to make.
Yes, and I think that definitely showed through. And as I say, I think like the puzzles were decent. I think the game's very easy, but
there are a few
maybe for
stumper
us,
moments.
But,
yeah.
Oh, definitely. But I think just the design. Or even just the theming of the puzzles was the issue more than the puzzles themselves.
Theming and the characters around them, I think.
Yeah.
So as you called it, it was like a bit of pirate window dressing. Rather than the other way round, rather than pirate stuff with a bit of anachronistic stuff thrown in to give it a bit of weird flavour.
Yeah. And I thought that like I was saying, like Muda feels like the ice world from a Nintendo game. It doesn't feel like something that fits very naturally into the Monkey Island world, unless you had a whole Monkey Island game that was set in like an icy location, which would work.
Yeah.
Or the Terror Island felt like it was like Mordor or something that was kind of weird.
Well, I guess the new settings are something to discuss as well before we
I guess the thing in general is it feels like a lot of ideas were thrown into this game, and maybe too many, when you could have really narrowed this down and focused it more and tightened it all up. And then it's the same with the story, with starting on Melee, going to Monkey, back to Melee, go to some islands, go back to Monkey Island again. I get what they were trying to do with that. They're kind of trying to, subvert things. Don't make Monkey Island the grand finale, although it actually ended up being. And the idea that the secret wasn't really on Monkey Island, which we predicted.
Yeah.
But it felt messy, and it I don't know. I thought the pacing was a bit all over the place as well.
It was a bit all over the place. Guybrush's motivation wasn't necessarily there. I don't feel like we felt the need to find the secret. We were kind of exasperated a bit like Elaine, right?
I thought that was interesting because Guybrush's desperation to get the secret, though, kind of reflected my own desperation to get to the end of the game the closer I got to it, which I thought was an effective parallel.
Yeah.
But it definitely is a bit a bit challenging in the sense that, do we as players necessarily care that much about the secret of Monkey Island? Or was it something that Ron thought that people cared about that they actually didn't? I don't know.
I think what we're getting at really is that the end, and this is kind of discussed in the ending, is the ending isn't that important, and it's the journey that's the important part. And that's kind of the part we didn't like.
I definitely just... Well, I just to say it one more time, you could take what the middle of this game and just really focus it and tighten it up and create something I think that felt really on point. But it isn't what happens in the game that we got.
Well, we'll get more stuck into it as we step through it in depth. But let's talk about some positives now, I think.
Yeah.
What did you like?
So I definitely really liked the opening of the game, the prologue.
Yeah. Scurvydogs.
Yeah, I thought it was... Again, a lot of people are interpreting this as what really happened at the end of Monkey Island 2. That's not my interpretation of it. I see it as just these two kids are playing at the end of reenacting the end of Monkey Island 2.
Yeah.
And it's just a coincidence that Chucky looks like Chucky and that those two people look like their parents. And because Big Whoop changes. At first we see Big Whoop, but then we see something else or somewhere else. And a lot of people I've already seen are just assuming that the framing device is set in Big Whoop. And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't interpret it like that at all. And I don't interpret Stan's amusement park at the end as being Big Whoop either.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's the thing is
on that.
Yeah.
Remember at the time I said, the guy that sells you the scurvy dogs kind of reminds me of the soda jerker guy
from Curse.
Curse. So it was a bit like it was kind of borrowing that kind of same kind of skeezy.
And I thought that was really effective at the beginning because I was like, it looks like we're not actually in Big Whoop anymore. We are kind of back in this pirate world because they were talking about Pieces of 8 and stuff. And there was all those close-ups of the disgusting hot dogs with like the hair and the flies on them and stuff.
There's a rat
grease
swimming
everywhere.
in a barrel.
There's like a rat floating on a lilo in a barrel with sunglasses on. That was kind of that was a very playful kind of joke. And
I
the
said
disgusting toilet as well.
Yeah, the gross toilet. I said to you, I kind of would have been happy if this was the game. You know?
Yeah. This kind of like this rundown beach park environment was really effective, I thought, because it was piratey, but at the same time it was really familiar because it was like the disgusting facilities you get at
in reality.
Beach parks and stuff.
Yeah, and they captured that really well.
And it was funny as we were playing it, I was like, when's Chucky going to turn on us? When's Chucky going to go evil again? And he didn't, because arguably this is not the Chucky from the end of Monkey Island 2, unless you interpret it that it is, but I don't, but yeah.
No, it's okay if you do.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember sitting there and you saying, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then that moment you see Guybrush sitting there on the bench, you kind of think, wow, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Is Guybrush real?
Very surreal kind of moment, yeah.
They're calling him affectionately Boybrush, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, Guybrush and Boybrush, because that's what he's credited as, and that's what his dialogue comes up if you have character names switched on as well.
Who's real? Is Guybrush real? Is Boybrush real? Is any of this real?
Is Elaine real?
Elaine real.
It kind of suggests at the end that they are, but then it draws into question, was LeChuck ever real and stuff like that. But
have you seen the ending? If you let Guybrush die a number of times.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's that sort of that game over where even the framing device isn't real.
Yeah. But that stuff's all great, and that's some of the stuff that I really like. Definitely is the framing at the beginning and end, and I like that prelude part. I thought that was really great.
I noticed that the character of Dee, the girl who's playing with you at the start, she seems to be this world sort of version of Captain Lila from the main game, was the impression that I get.
Yeah.
Again, maybe other people will disagree. That was just my interpretation of it. But then it's sort of, if you think about the ending, there's one epilogue where Lila and Chucky are chasing each other around in the park over the key. And there's another ending where I said Chucky and Dee, I should say. But there's another ending where LeChuck and Lila are fighting each other over the chest in the tunnels. So it's kind of both. And I guess that sort of leads to the ending.
Yes.
If you want to talk about that, unless you had other stuff you wanted to say about the prologue.
No, I like the prologue. While we're talking about things we like, I like that, and I like the ending. I like part 5 all up.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to say, when we did go into the monkey tunnels, it was getting really intense for me because I was thinking, are we going to find out the secret? This must be the ending. What's going to happen? And going further and further into the tunnels and noticing that the tunnels were starting to look artificial.
Yeah.
There were pipes and scaffolds or something, or like kind of the framework underneath the statues and stuff was starting to be glimpsed through, and I thought, this is finally when the anachronisms are coming in, because they'd been pretty absent for...
Yeah, it had been much more like
most of the
secret
game.
in that way.
Yeah, and... Yeah, when I was like on the edge of my seat when LeChuck opened up the wheel at the end and the door was there.
Yeah.
And the door opened and there was that purple glow and I was like, oh my god, this is we're going back to Melee Island, like the end of Monkey Island 2. And that, as I said to you the other day, that image really got to me of LeChuck running through the door with the chest.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, oh, LeChuck's, it's like it's going to happen again and LeChuck's going to escape into the other world with the secret. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think?
Well, I loved all the tunnels, and that was really when the artwork really came into its own, I felt.
Yeah, definitely.
It was one of my favourite environments of the game. The puzzle, I really like the puzzle at the end where you kind of, you've got everything you need, and it's just figuring out stuff.
Yeah.
I would have liked it if it was kind of like you ended up kind of getting rid of all of your inventory.
Yeah, I was thinking that would happen as well. Yeah.
But you had to kind of backtrack, and I liked it. It was a little abstract, the puzzles. They were kind of just puzzles for the sake of it.
Yes. That seemed very intentional, right?
Yeah. And it was actually a really nice way to wrap up a game. I know I've mentioned earlier that I don't really like the kind of boss fight at the end of Secret that much, and I really like this as a way to end it.
It was a good change to not to have another fight with LeChuck.
Yeah, it was like a pursuit, which I liked. I liked Wally hanging there, revisiting the monkey head and everything. Escaping into I thought that puzzle was really hard, the big wheel. That was one of the harder puzzles in the game.
Yeah, right. So this is the thing is the game has hints. Neither of us needed them.
No.
But that code wheel puzzle, in my first 2 playthroughs I solved by accident. Both times, as I've told you already. I thought I understood it, and then it was like, this isn't working, and I was just fiddling around with the wheels, and then the door just opened.
Yes.
So that was a little bit anticlimactic.
That was a big reference to the Dial-Up Pirate wheel, of course.
Yes, yeah.
Well, we haven't really said that to each other, but obviously we both...
No. Definitely didn't escape my notice that was... And I noticed the thing where LeChuck's using it and he's like, I hate puzzles. That seemed like a little nod back to Tales, I thought, where LeChuck struggled to solve puzzles. I thought was...
Yeah, I think this was a neater ending. This was a neater ending than that. And as we're getting towards slowly, I really like the sideshow at the end, the theme park.
Yeah. When I was really wondering what was going to happen, and when it's funny, I've been reading people online who are like, "Oh, I was so disappointed. It was like they did the same thing as they did at the end of Monkey Island 2," and I was so. One, they didn't, but 2, I was so happy when I came through that door and came out into the alley again. I was like, yes, they're doing something weird. I'm so glad, because I was worried that it was just going to end with Guybrush opening the chest in the tunnels and it would just have this, like, in-universe ending that would be kind of a nothing conclusion.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
No. Glad it didn't. And Guybrush is kind of so hell-bent on that point. He's taunting LeChuck.
Yeah.
About finding the secret. And then if we really do open the chest, it's a t-shirt, which is a reference to...
Yeah.
Secret.
Yeah, which I liked. I did you? Yeah, I didn't open the chest the first time.
No,
but I did the ending.
My original ending was taking the key and shutting off all the lights, so I got Dee chasing Chucky with the key, or vice versa.
Yeah, I got that as well. I was like, I don't care what's in the chest. I'm just gonna leave it, and
Yeah.
it kind of didn't matter that much either way. But yeah, I liked that you had that option at the end.
Yeah, it was kind of delightfully weird. And there's so much to say about it.
Yes.
I reflected on it like in the coming days, and it made me a little emotional, weirdly, because I don't often get like that.
Yeah.
Just reflecting on, especially as someone who really grew up and has really been the right age for all these games.
Yeah, exactly.
Grew up with it. It really hit me, that ending. And it, as I said, like up top of this, it kind of redeemed the rest of the stuff for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was, as I say, when I got to the end, I was so relieved that it ended the way it did.
Well, as we talk about this kind of initial manic, kind of anxious playthrough, I know you've played it through a few times, and what I really want to do now is just relax and play it and
take your time through it.
I mean, we kind of did talk to everyone, but really kind of appreciate it, listen to everyone, kind of experiment more with puzzles, not just be like, oh, obviously that's how you solve this puzzle, but that's kind of what I do with the old games now, as I often you know what, I've never tried using that on that, stuff like that.
And I think there are quite a few options in the game that you can do just for fun and stuff like that.
Yeah, but for us, like there is kind of an old criticism of adventure games that kind of they're one and done, but for us it's always been like you can play them over and over and over, and kind of it's like watching an old movie and getting more out of it each time.
Yeah, or reading a favourite novel or something like that. Yeah. And this game kind of included that in itself, the idea of telling these stories perhaps multiple times, and Boybrush and Chucky playing at the different stories that they'd heard. And it did really connect, like as you said, that was a really effective concept, because that very much reflected our own experiences as being kids and playing at those games, and then talking about them and thinking about them and reenacting them even when we weren't playing the games, and with Lego and all that sort of stuff. And then of course you were saying the idea of a parent passing on these experiences to their child as well.
Well, like I'm both of those things. Like we literally were those two little boys playing a game, and we even were for a moment there the other day when it came out. We were those boys again, and we, I am the parent telling the son the story, and there's it hits you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's funny because I know that definitely a lot of people have said that the ending was very emotional for them, and people saying that they cried or whatever at the end. Fair enough. It's funny. My experience when the game ended, I laughed with joy at the end.
That's really nice.
Of the game. Yeah, I just thought, it was. There was just so much. I was so relieved that it ended the way it did. I thought it was so clever. I thought that it captured so much. And yet it had also contained all that weirdness and ambiguity that I love so much about LeChuck's Revenge. Yeah. And retained all of that while also making everything else work as well. I just, was so pleased with that ending, despite all my criticisms of a lot of the middle of the game.
Yeah, well, let's talk about some other things we liked, just kind of more the face value stuff, I suppose.
Yeah.
I liked Terror Island, for example. I don't know if you liked it.
No, I did like Terror Island. I think it looks like stuff was possibly cut from it, I think, because there's a couple of empty rooms, but I did enjoy that a lot. That felt really like old school adventure game with a maze and that kind of thing. Yeah.
The maze with the screaming, which is supposed to be Herman. I liked Herman turning up, and Herman just living in the dark at the bottom of this cave.
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I thought that was a good use of him. I didn't expect that to be where Herman was going to show up, and
No.
I think Wally Wingert's performance as Herman was.
He sounded like he did an escape. That was awesome. But he was doing kind of like more Dave Grossman kind of dialogue, I assume.
Yeah.
It was great. Yeah, I really liked Herman turning up, and I liked Guybrush kind of just laying into him to steal the key. And I really like that maze. I love, possibly my favourite scene of the game is that stumbling into that clearing with the skeletons who are, I assume, are supposed to be the pirates on the front of the secret cover.
Yeah, I think the third skeleton, the one on the right, his sash or belt even says Purcell on it, because that's where Steve Purcell signed his name on the cover of Secret.
Yeah. And I
like
liked...
they've literally come out of the painting, yeah.
I liked that there were empty rooms there. It just kind of made it feel more like a real environment. And that's been a criticism of a thing for this and Tales for me, is that things like Brrr, Muda, everything that's there is there because it's part of the adventure game, right? I need some houses in the background and stuff.
I did notice that Bermuda, if you go to the map, there are a couple of houses on the other side of the street, but you can't see them when you're in the actual town centre.
Yeah.
And definitely, those empty rooms on Terror Island did add to the sense of mystery a bit as well.
Yeah.
I would have liked Terror Island to needed a bit more context, I think, but I did like it. Even if I think it could have, like Bermuda, I think it could have been made a lot more piratey than it was. But
it could have been more piratey.
I liked the maze and everything like that.
I probably would have liked to seen it as like a burnt-out wood tick kind of thing, but I liked it for what it was. And I did like that maze puzzle. That was one of the hardest puzzles for me, and because I didn't realise you could go back to the beginning.
Well, I think that it was to force you to figure that out, right?
Yeah. Because
so that you
I was lost in there for ages.
Later.
Yeah. But yeah, as an environment, I really liked that as one of the new places.
It took me a while to figure out I need to use the sign to get out of Herman's cave as well.
Okay.
It's trying to light a fire and all this stuff, and then I'm like, oh no, I can just use the sign. That was a reference to Colossal Cave Adventure, I believe. The XYZZY.
Oh, okay. I figured it was something. I feel like it rang a bell, but I wasn't sure what it was. What else did you like?
As I say, I really like the concept, I said this to you before, of a prison island. And Stan being in prison.
Yeah, definitely. That was a good idea.
Really funny idea. As I say, Bermuda, I'm not 100% on, because it feels like something from a Nintendo game, but...
yeah,
the idea of Stan getting sent to prison in this quarry is a really clever idea, and I wish they'd made more of it. But I liked the idea of having to extend Stan's sentence so that he'll let you bust him out of jail and stuff like that.
Yeah, you and I have discussed how you could probably make it a bit more interesting, that kind of pirate prison and Stan inside the pirate prison and stuff. But I thought that was conceptually really good.
Yeah.
He'd been caught up for his dodgy dealings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Music.
I thought the music was really good. A lot of it is reprising tunes from the older games. There are a few new tunes that are good. Like, I think the Tunnels music, the Monkey Tunnels music at the end might have been a new composition, and definitely the Bermuda throne room scene I've said already I really like as well.
I liked the rockin' version of the Scumbar theme.
Yeah, that was good.
Pirate leaders.
And I like the version of the Woodtick theme that played when you were on the sea map as well.
Yeah. I liked the Carla's old house that was a museum, and we discussed this, and it felt very Thimbleweed Park, especially the character in it. But I liked that scene.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the idea of a pirate museum, it was interesting, and it reminded me of Planet Threepwood.
Yeah, well, I feel like there are a lot of kind of similarities you can make to escape in this.
Yeah, probably more than Ron and Dave would necessarily have realised, I think.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff, as you say, like Planet Threepwood, a lot of the kind of bureaucratic kind of puzzles and things in that are kind of similar to this.
Yeah, I thought there was definitely a lot of strong ideas added in. I think Carla being governor worked well, and
Yeah.
again, they implied that was because of following on from the events of Escape, how she got a cushy government job.
Yeah, yeah. That was another thing I liked. I liked that all the other stuff happened, except for the HT Marley thing. That's kind of retconned, because it doesn't really retcon anything, you know, but at the same time it does. Like, that's one of the things.
Yeah, and even thinking about Escape, the idea that of the tunnels under the monkey head becoming more and more artificial was kind of reminiscent of the monkey robot in Escape as well, where you've got the artificial side and the hellish supernatural side. In this, were kind of fused together, which is another funny thing. And I wonder if that was at all intentional or just by accident as well.
Yeah. I don't know.
What did you think of the Chums puzzle?
Because I've only played that once, so I've not experimented with it.
Yeah.
Does it make any difference what you say once you've learned all the things?
You can tell quite a few different stories.
You can tell different stories, but is every line correct, or can you get stuff wrong?
I think you can get stuff wrong. You have to make sure you've got all of the different elements, but each element will be in a different section depending on which story you're telling.
That's what I thought, but because I haven't experimented with it, I wasn't sure. It was okay.
What story did you tell?
It was about Morgan escaping the whale.
Yeah, I did the Lair of the Leviathan story.
I didn't really like the old pirate leaders in the fish shop. I found that a bit boring. What did you think?
I thought it was a bit overdone. There was a lot of dialogue about fish and Bella Fisher and stuff that...
Yeah. I think that's a funny idea, is like fishermen embellishing their stories. It was okay. What did you think of that puzzle, while you're asking me?
Yeah, I thought it was a nice change from hunting
like a new concept
like that. Yeah, and it made me think about what Ron said. If he was to do something like insult sword fighting again, he would have made it more modular. It made me wonder if that was related in that case, because I think that it clearly behind the scenes, it's like there's each line is associated with a certain switch basically, and you've got to hit each of those in order to have told a successful story. So I thought that from a puzzle design perspective, that was quite effective. I overall I thought that the Chums puzzle was a good one, and I liked this was kind of the kind of humour that I wish there'd been more of. The bit where the pirate leader is pulling the flag down and it's really, really slow. That
stuff's funny.
Felt like an old school Monkey Island joke to me.
Yeah, and he's kind of going, "Oh, come on."
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt a bit like climbing the tree, you know. Guybrush is like, "Oh, I think I've got it now," you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, there are a few funny moments like that. We talked about Guybrush pulling the sword out of his pants, and he kind of gets stuck,
and he pulls the face and looks down at it and kind of has to yank at it.
Yeah. I think talking about Guybrush's character in this is a whole other tale.
Yeah. He definitely he feels like later game Guybrush to me. The kind of dumb Guybrush.
Yeah, it felt kind of an escape on Guybrush.
Yeah.
But speaking of things we liked, I liked the voice acting. It was all fine to me. Thought Dom did a good job. As you say, Wally Wingett. It didn't take me out of the action, so therefore it was good. I actually quite liked Gullett's voice actor.
Yes. I thought the voice acting for all of the Chuck's crew was quite good.
Yeah, especially because we've had some, Bob came back. It's the same voice actor, I believe. It's a similar.
Yes, it was, yeah. I like Flambe as a character, this demon who just wants to be left alone and not do any work. I thought,
lazy demon.
I kind of liked him, and I like when he shows up at the end to try to warn you. One of the things he can say is that you and Chuck deserve each other, which I kind of liked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like little bits and pieces of stuff. I thought the atmosphere of Monkey Island was quite good.
Overall, yeah, and it had that kind of dusky feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really like going back to LeChuck's ship, because I think that wasn't my favourite part.
Definitely. I think there's way too many times you had to go back to LeChuck's ship. I got really tired of that environment, and I got tired of going back to Melee Town to go to the locksmith's shop, among other things.
Yeah.
And going to see Wally. It's stuff like that where it felt like some stuff got a bit repetitive. And then when you wanted to really get your teeth into a new location, there wasn't a huge amount to do, like Bermuda. Yeah. You can't talk to any of the Bermudians. They just grunt.
So some people have too much dialogue and some people have none, kind of split the difference,
Yes. Yeah. So it was, as I say, it was a bit mixed in that regard. I thought it was really, when you do the bit with the favourite food, LeChuck's favourite food and his music and stuff, that was a strange puzzle. I was really expecting it was going to be that LeChuck's favourite food was coleslaw, which we've somewhat mocked Tails' thinking about that a bit before, but they didn't do that. I thought the use of LeChuck was a bit all over the place as well.
In the characterization, a bit like Elaine. There was nothing threatening. It was a bit funny.
Overall, I think having a big open puzzle sequence that they did in Chapter 4 worked.
Yeah, and I think I'll come to like that part a lot more than I probably did in the first part, even though it was probably my second favourite after the last part.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the other thing I was going to say about the last part was I liked the increasingly kind of creepy monkey statues in
definitely
the tunnels. I'm not sure what was being implied, especially by the third layer of monkey statues, but I found that quite mysterious.
The damaged one. And you stabbed them all.
Yeah. Very seems symbolic of something, but I'm not sure what.
I'll have to meditate on that when we get to our part 5 discussion. Do you want to conclude this now? This has been a pretty good initial, because the dust's still settling on this.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot to talk about, but so many of my ideas or my thoughts on this are not just either praise or criticism, but thoughts about how could this have been done differently or better or whatever, and then really getting into the details of the individual parts. So we'll save those for separate installments.
Yeah, I think so. But I think for now, that's our initial kind of brain dump about Return. I'm happy it's here. I am happy that I've finished it.
Yeah.
And do I like it? Yes and no. And I'm curious to see how I grow with it and how I reflect on it in the future.
Yeah.
And it has actually opened up my appreciation of other games in the series in a weird way. And I'm kind of excited to go back and play those games now after playing this.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for listening to Rubber Chicken with a Podcast in the Middle. I've been Gordon.
I'm Alastair.
And next time, we'll join you for more discussion about Return to Monkey Island. In the meantime, see how many times you can finish it. Oh, and another thing.
Look behind you! A 3-headed monkey!